Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask questions of two of the witnesses, and I'll start with Ms. Stats, and then I have a second question for you if there's time after I go to the second witness. We're talking about, and it has been introduced, a bill that would put in place a ban of many single-use plastics. And I would ask you, Ms. Stats, what are some of the unintended economic or environmental impacts of the alternatives? There are alternatives that have been named, but I'd like to know some of the problems that may be there for those alternatives.
Thank you for that question, Senator. As we said, packaging has this really critical job to play. It protects the safety, quality of product, and as we just mentioned, the COVID pandemic laid bare the need for a range of packaging, including single-use plastic packaging. What we need to make sure is that we have all options on the table when it comes to packaging types, because there's a range of consumers in terms of the packaging that they need for their use. There's a range of products that need different packaging. We have entire teams of PhD packaging engineers who are spending their careers making sure that the packaging that's used for a product is the best one possible to do its job, to get the product to consumers safely and intact and with minimal environmental footprint. So what we don't want to do is take quivers or arrows out of the quiver, right? We want to make sure that we have all of those options on the table, but a system that can actually process them, because forcing switches in packaging material, if they aren't the right, if they don't have a full life cycle analysis in mind, they can cause those unintended consequences, potentially more greenhouse gas emissions, or they might be fragile and break and you lose the product and you waste food, et cetera. We want to think about the role that packaging has to play. So I think we want to have a recycling system that will accept and use and keep that packaging in play, keeping it out of landfills and absolutely keeping it out in the environment.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that. Now, I want to ask a question to Ms. Croat, and it may sound like it's a little stretch in this committee, but I think it's very important to me. And I'd like to have you share your thoughts on probably one of the most discussed recycling problems that's out there, and that is of electric car batteries. Would you share with us your knowledge on this?
Sure. Look, I am not an expert in battery recycling, but what I can tell you is that certainly the fact that this is an emerging growth industry, and that e-waste and battery waste and things adjacent to that are still emerging, that it is in early days in terms of solving some of these challenges. And so, as you can see with the plastics issue, where there has been significant attention drawn to it over the last couple of years, when you put the microscope on something, that's when stuff happens. That's when we can actually make change. And so in order to solve kind of getting away from some of the raw material inputs that go into that and being able to reutilize the kind of high value material that's coming out of that, we need to actually put attention into what the problem is and the innovation that can come around that. And then I might just add to Megan's answer on the previous question as well, it's also not binary in terms of what exists today versus like solving for packaging or processing. We have to solve for both. For an example of that is we invested in a company called Cambridge Crops, which has a silk protein that goes over food from meat to produce, et cetera, that helps extend the shelf life, that removes the need for as much packaging around that. And at the same time, there is critical packaging that's needed. So we need to drive innovation. We need to drive system innovation and product innovation. And that's true for plastics, paper, and battery recycling.
All right. Well, let me get to the second part of the first question. That would be for Ms. Stas. Would you speak to the economic impact that a ban, such as the ban that has been discussed, would have on the cost of living for middle-class Americans?
Yes, I can, Senator, and thank you for that question. We want to make sure that the products that U.S. consumers use and rely on every single day are delivered safely, intact, and affordably. And affordability is certainly part of the decision around what's the best packaging for that product. So if we're banning certain materials, or if we're taking those arrows out of the quiver, we could unintentionally be driving up the cost of getting product to consumers or creating unintended waste. So that is certainly not an outcome that we want to see. And again, I think we need that underlying system that can handle the packaging that is the best for the product, the packaging that is in use for today, and the packaging that's in use for tomorrow, so that we don't see unintended consequences like increased cost for consumers.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.